Hey, this is part 2 of how to read obfuscated code. Okay, so if you listen to part 1, then you know that I'm trying to figure out how the AI for monsters works in Minecraft. So here I've gone through and I've named lots of classes based on my searching for the creeper in the source code. So here I named player, and then I found another class that subclasses it, so I'm going to rename it player base, meaning it's a base class. Another trick I do is if I find a class and I kind of sort of think I know what it is, but I'm not too confident about it, I'll append an X to the name. Like here you see portal base X and portal X. So I saw some portal related messages in there, but I really didn't have a strong understanding of what those classes did, so I named them portal X and portal base X. We see that this base class is for player and some portal classes. So what I'm guessing this is there's a player and then there's another player object for when you step into the portal, and then maybe even there's a separate player object for when you're in hell and you're across the portal. So I'm just going to name it based on that, and if we get more information we can give it smarter names later. So I'm going to call this portal travel player X. You want to stay focused somewhat on what your task is, otherwise you can kind of rat hole in figuring out what everything does. So try not to spend too much time on any one particular thing until you really get to what you're looking for. So I'm trying to keep in mind that I want my focus on the NPC classes. So I'm just going to quickly rename these, even if I'm not super confident in what they actually do, unless I actually need them later. So I see that char ping again, and I see player, I see bad mobs and good mobs. So this looks like it's a living base class. It's a base class for everything that's alive. And then we pop down and see what that class's base class is. And this is the last base class. So let's just look through really quickly and see if there's any strings that pop out at us that give us some hint. There's random splash, bubble, lots of math, lots of calculations, which makes sense since it's a physics-based game. Oh, okay. Position, motion, rotation, fall distance, fire, air, on ground. Those look like state values. So that's good. Okay, I'm pretty confident this is related to the living. So we're going to call this living base. Okay, staying focused, I pop back up to Creeper. I'm going to search again for references to Creeper, and we're going to see what new insights we have based on all those classes that we renamed. So we're going to do another find, expand all uses so we can take a look at the code. Okay, let's take a look at this one. Okay, this is definitely taking a creeper as a parameter, so this is a direct creeper class. I see that there's OpenGL up there, so that immediately says to me that this probably has something to do with just rendering. Yeah, it's a very short class. There's some OpenGL stuff in here, so this is just a rendering class most likely. This won't have any useful AI in it. So let's move on. Okay, we can skip this class. Okay, that also has an OpenGL thing in it, so we're going to skip that. Here we go. This looks juicy. Okay, these look like this looks more like what we're looking for. Lots of monsters. All the mobs. There's arrow, snowball, item, and painting. This is kind of an eclectic group of objects. Okay, the class has 4 maps. So that to figure out what your class is doing, you want to see what sort of data it holds. This holds 4 maps, so it's some sort of mapper class. Okay, it takes a class and then an ID string and an ID number, and it puts it in all of these maps. So I'm just going to rename these parameters to make it easier to read. Now this int, if you look down here, you can see that the numbers are very specific. They're unique. They tend to increment. So that's very clearly an ID. So I'm going to rename this parameter as such. Now taking a look at what gets put into these different maps, you can see it maps the living name to the living class. So at first I put in class map, but then I realized that the next one does the same in reverse. It maps the class to the name string. So let's name these appropriately. This is name class map, and then the next one is class name map. This one maps the ID to the class. And then lastly, the class is mapped to the ID. So this is clearly a cache of monsters, IDs, and names to make it for quick lookup. So we can just call this like a mob class mapper. Living map, that's fine. This is how mobs get added to the map, so we'll call it add to maps. It doesn't have to be perfect. There, that makes more sense. So in the static constructor, all these monsters and random objects get added to the maps. Now, once we name that, we can move on to the next step and see what actually references this, and that will tell us more about the next set of classes. So like I said before, it's kind of, you pick off the easy ones, you rename those, you see what reference those, and you can kind of get more information, and it's kind of an exploratory experience. So we can see here that it was referencing B. Again, it's most important to name the class, because once you name the class, the methods are pretty easy to go back and rename as you need them, like I did here. So it returns living map manager. It gets the name from the class from this living. So we're going to rename this method getName. And we're starting to flesh out the living base class as we go through and we take a look at these different parts. here I try to pick apart what's going on in this file. Now what I notice is all these methods are named A, and they all take a string, and then they all take a different type as their second parameter. Like one is a float, one's a double, this is a string. So like this example, this for example sets some sort of a double value. So this class is doing some sort of, is like a settings class. So naming this class is most important. We'll name it to like settings, and then if we see something that does settings.a, then we know that it's basically either saving or retrieving some value here. So I'm only going to rename a couple of those right now. This is like a settings map. IntelliJ helps me out by finding instances of this class and giving me the opportunity to give it a better name, which I'm going to do. Okay, so param JW. So the settings class was called the JW class. We're going to look through the entire project for everything named param JW. That way we don't have to go through and rename every instance of the settings class. So you can see here it's picking up a lot of param JWs, and they're either getting or setting some sort of a string ID and then a value. So we're just going to replace and path everything named param JW to settings, because they're all instances of the settings class. So that's a nice little de-obfuscation trick. So you can see here the settings is renamed. If we scroll down a little bit, even in the next method and so on, param JW now shows up as settings. So that's nice. Whoa, scroll bar is kind of funky.